Doing any kind of business in Malaysia, you really need to hear this. The rulebook for financial compliance, it's been completely torn up. The time for friendly warnings is gone. We're talking about a new era of aggressive, no-nonsense enforcement. And believe me, this isn't just some small policy update, it's a full-on crackdown. And what you don't know could literally cost you millions.
And it all kicks off with this incredibly blunt warning from Malaysia's central bank. The message from Bank Negara couldn't be clearer. Ignorance is no longer a defense. The days of saying, oops, I didn't know, are over. We are now in an era where you're expected to know the rules, follow them to the letter, and the penalties for failing are, well, they're severe. You see, for years, the whole approach from regulators was about education, about guidance. That has done a complete 180. We are now smack in the middle of a zero-tolerance era. The shift is from education to hardcore enforcement.
So what does this new enforcement actually look like on the ground? Well, here's a perfect and kind of terrifying example. HSBC got hit with a penalty of nearly 3 million ringgit. And for what? For a single sanction screening failure. One mistake. This is so far beyond a slap on the wrist, it's a huge, painful statement about how serious regulators are now.
And it's not just about sanctions, not by a long shot. Bank Rakyat was fined 2.85 million ringgit because of issues with system downtime and tech risk. This just goes to show you how broad this crackdown is. It's hitting all the different pillars of compliance. The big takeaway here? Absolutely no area of risk is being ignored. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, okay, but this is just a problem for the big banks, you need to stop right there. You've got to recalibrate your thinking, and fast. Because the latest enforcement actions prove that what they call designated non-financial businesses and professions, we're talking lawyers, accountants, company secretaries, you guys are now under the exact same intense spotlight. So the big question is, why? Why this sudden aggressive shift? Why is this happening right now? Well, to get that, you have to understand that the entire battlefield of financial crime has been completely redrawn. And this slide really nails the change. You know, a decade ago, regulators were laser-focused on traditional crimes. Think drug trafficking, smuggling, that kind of thing. But today, the number one threat isn't physical at all. It's digital. The whole game has moved to sophisticated online scams and massive, widespread fraud. And this chart just drives that point home. It's from the National Risk Assessment, and it shows you how Malaysia's risk landscape has evolved. Just look at that red line. That's fraud and scams. It goes from being a pretty minor issue back in 2005 to exploding into the undisputed number one threat today. It's completely dwarfing everything else. So naturally, as the criminals change their tactics, the regulators have had to change their focus. That same national risk assessment now points directly to the sectors that are most vulnerable, the ones being exploited by these new criminals. And guess who's right at the top of that list? You guessed it, lawyers and company secretaries. This is the new front line. These roles have a name. They're called gatekeepers. Why? Because you are the ones who hold the keys to the financial system. Criminals desperately need you to set up their shell companies, to move their money, to buy assets, all to make their dirty money look clean and legitimate. And that's exactly why regulators are now holding you, the gatekeepers, responsible for who you let through the door. Okay, so with all this intense focus on the gatekeepers, what's the number one mistake that's actually getting companies fined? It's something I'm calling the red flag trap, and you absolutely need to understand how it works. And here it is. This is the simple but critical point that so many businesses are tripping over. It is not enough to just find a suspicious client or transaction. The huge mistake firms are making is they identify a red flag, and then they do nothing. They don't report it. And in the regulator's eyes, detecting something and not reporting it is exactly the same as not complying at all. It is a fatal mistake. Let's look at a real-world example so this really sinks in. Boardroom Corporate Services. Their system actually worked. It correctly identified a red flag with a new client during onboarding. So far, so good. But here's where it all went wrong. They never filed a suspicious transaction report, an STR, with Bank Negara. And the result? A 46,000 ringgit penalty. They fell right into the red flag trap. You know, this brings up a really good question. We keep throwing around this term red flags. But what do they actually look like in the real world? It can often be much simpler than you might think. Sometimes, a red flag is just behavior. Imagine a new client who asks way too many detailed questions about your firm's anti-money laundering policies. Think about it. An honest client is focused on their business. A criminal? They're probing your defenses, looking for weaknesses. That weird level of curiosity, that's a huge red flag.
Or it can be structural. Let's say you look up a new corporate client, and their registered address isn't an office, it's just a P.O. box or one of those mailbox services. There's no physical office, no employees. That could be a massive sign that you're dealing with a shell company, something designed specifically to hide the true owner. And that right there is another major red flag.
Okay, so knowing all the risks is one thing, but surviving in this new era, that requires a solid plan. So let's switch gears and talk about the solution. What are the absolute must-do rules of survival for your business right now?
Here you go. This 4-step guide is basically your key to survival. Number 1, verify the true owners. I'm not just talking about collecting forms. You have to dig deeper until you can prove you know who actually controls and profits from the company. 2, make sanctions screening a top priority. As HSBC found out the hard way, one failure is all it takes. Make sure your systems are solid and updated constantly. 3, prepare for audits now. Don't wait. Gatekeepers are a prime target, so run your own internal stress tests before the regulators come knocking. And 4, probably the most important rule of all, submit those reports and do it fast. Remember the red flag trap. If you have even a tiny suspicion something's off, file that report. In this new world, hesitating is the same as being non-compliant.
And that brings us to the final and most critical question you've got to ask yourself. The entire landscape is changed. The rules are being enforced with absolutely zero tolerance. And the penalties? Well, they're massive. So take a hard look at your own company. Is your business a compliance fortress, or are you the regulator's next target?